Welcome to Between the Covers. I am so delighted to be joined by two amazing authors. It's Women's Hour today, so I'm excited. Sylvie Bordzuk is the author of Mystery at Sea. Mystery at Sea is a children's book. So for anyone who is doing last minute shopping out there right now, you definitely want to head over if you have any little ones. And Lynn Goodwin is the author of Never Too Late and some other ones, but I picked Never Too Late because I just had such a rollicking good time reading that one myself. So welcome, Sylvie. It is your first book. Congratulations.
Thank you, Stephanie. I couldn't have done it without you.
Oh, well, I am so excited, and Sylvie's book went to #1 on Amazon for new releases in children's Noah's Ark books. I was beyond thrilled. And it's your first, it better not be your last. That's all I can say.
have ideas now for others. I do.
Do you? Do you? Well, that's what I wanted to ask you to even get started is, especially people ask me this about children's books. Mm-hmm. Where do the ideas come from? And children's books, I think, are some of the hardest books to write because you only have, I mean, let's say 1,000 words maximum. Every word matters. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea? And then, I mean, you are just amazing that every single word counted. A lot of us have a lot of garbage words out there, but you can't do that in a kid's book.
Well, I've always enjoyed writing, even though I never published anything before. I really enjoyed writing poetry, which I did a while back, and then I've been doing it again because I joined a poetry writing workshop through a library. And my poems tend to be very simple about everyday things. And everyday things include nature. And I happen to be a very big nature lover, animal lover. And I don't honestly know how this particular idea came to me for the children's book, but it did start about 10 years ago. Somehow about 10 years ago, I had this idea to write this book on this topic, and it had to do with rhyming, so it had to do with poetry. And I just kept going from there, and it took a long time, but my main problem was the illustration. I didn't have anybody to do the illustration. So that's why it got put on the back burner for a very long time. And then when I met you, quite by accident, that the gallery where there was an artist's opening night, and we started talking, and I asked you to publish children's books, and I asked you about illustrators, and you said absolutely, and that's what really got me going then to continue and see it through to the end.
Oh, well, I am beyond thrilled, but even and I love being part of children's books. It's just, we want to start people young. We want to get them in when they're little so that they absolutely love books. But you without even prompting from me, got the storyline exactly, some of the things we say to children's writers. For example, you need to get the storyline in right away. We can't mess around with exposition with a children's book. You've got to present whatever the problem or the conflict is immediately. You've got to engage children. Repetitiveness and you being a poet is such a great thing with this, so that people can build upon it. Your book is such a wonderful one, and you and I spoke about this for children learning vocabulary, because in the course of the book, you used probably about 14 different words for the word speaking or looking, or and it grew in so a child would learn vocabulary through all of that. You did all those on your own, so you must be an incredibly avid reader. Tell us about that.
I am. I'm reading all the time, at the table, before I go to sleep. I read with my cat on the couch. I love to read, and I've actually kept a little notebook since I was maybe a teenager of all the books that I've read.
Did you really?
Oh,
you're good.
With exceptions, with exceptions.
Yeah.
But all the fiction books that I've ever read are in that book, and some nonfiction books. And it goes back to when I was a teen. And
That's amazing.
I like looking back at that as well. And it's funny. One thing that's really funny is how, let's take the letter S for the authors whose last names start with S, and it's pretty long. It's a very long list. My handwriting changed over the years. It just, it's really, you would barely recognize my handwriting as a teacher as a teenager from my handwriting now. It has just evolved.
My gosh, if we were all so insightful to start writing down every book we ever read, how amazing that list would be. Were there any that you didn't want to write on the list because they were a secret?
No, but I didn't write down books that I stopped in the middle of or didn't like, or that were, if I had to finish them. If I finished them, they went into the list.
Okay. Now, any particular favorite genres or authors on that list that you might have even forgotten until you look back?
Not that I've forgotten. I do have a favorite author. It's Alexander McCall Smith, who wrote the Ladies First Detective Agency series. And I've read every single book of his in that series and in several other series. And I just started his brand new book. It's about elephants. And the title has elephant in it. And I counted how many of his books I've read. And this is my 58th.
Oh,
just his.
58.
Alexander McCall Smith.
I'm dazzled both that you read 58 books by one author and that he wrote.
More. He's written more than that.
Wow. Now, after all this influence, does that mean that this was a wonderful children's book, but that we have adult mysteries coming next?
No, I think what I'm going to do next is take some of my poems and some of the little vignette type stories that I've written over the years, going way back, and turn those into children's stories. And maybe put them in one volume, maybe make one heroine, maybe a 5-year-old heroine who is the main character in each of these stories. I haven't decided that yet, but I do have a lot of poems and quite a few stories. And these are all things that are nonfiction. When I write about what I see. I write about what I experience, with the exception of mystery.
So is dark.
Right, with the exception of this book. But when I observe something in nature, or I observe some wonderful behavior, that's what my stories are about. So I'd like to make a book based on those experiences, and I'd like to make it for children.
Oh, I love that. I think that is fabulous. I'm also, by the way, going to be sending you, for those that don't make it into the book, or even those that do, some links to our poetry anthologies that we put out at the Red Penguin Collection, because so many poets find that, they have more poems than they could possibly put in books in many cases.
Right.
So we'll have you send those our way. Well, that sounds like a great next step.
Thank you.
Absolutely a great next step. On a completely different note than the Noah's Ark children's book, Lynn wrote Never Too Late, which is the story of a woman who is married for the first time at age 62. Now, when Lynn first sent the book over to me to read, I must admit, people are constantly asking me what my favorite genre is. And even though I read at least 5 books a week just because of work and manuscripts and such, I always say that when I am on vacation and I get to pick whatever I want, it's always romance. I totally admit, usually it's kind of smut romance just because I want to turn my brain off for a little while. So when Lynn's book arrived, I took a peek and said, oh, let me check this one out. And boy, am I glad that I opened that book up. So please welcome Lynn Goodwin. Lynn, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad you chose this book.
I did, and I enjoyed it. And of course, that old adage, write what you know. I kept I kept reading it thinking, is this a novel or is this a memoir?
I once had a student ask me how you told the difference between a memoir and a novel. And I told him that novels are made up and memoir is the truth as the narrator remembers it.
That's a great definition. And in the hands of a capable writer like yourself, we can't necessarily tell the difference because it was written as a novel, but it did make me wonder, gosh, she's writing like she knows exactly what these characters would be thinking, doing, and saying. Wonder if it's a memoir that's just a unbelievably well-written one. So kudos to you, a fabulous book.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. It is all true. About our third date, I began thinking, this is so improbable. It would make a memoir that has not been done before. And, and it did.
Oh my gosh. And at this point, after reading the book, I want to meet him.
Oh, well, he's in the other room. He'd be happy to come in and take over. But I'm going to pass on that option.
So I've read.
Yeah. He's a very good man. And I can't change him. I can only change myself. And at my age, that's fine.
Absolutely. Well, I have to admit, I did not wait till 62 to get married, but I learned an awful lot about men, even though I've been married for 25 years, reading your book. It made me think, I need to be nicer to mine.
I try to be nice, and I try to see things from his point of view, and the same is true. He believes marriage is for life, and while we may not have a lot of it left, none of us know, we're very, very married.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Well, I loved reading the love story and being along for the ride. I kind of felt like your confidant and best friend as you were going out on the dates and thinking things over, and you'd go back and think, I don't know. And then he'd call and you would light up when his name was across your cell phone. I definitely felt like your best friend in the room. That's for sure.
Terrific. You were my best friend.
You see?
So is every other reader.
Exactly. Oh, Lynn, what a great way to say it. So tell me about your writing in general, because I know this is not your only one.
No, it's not. I seem to be going between memoir and young adult. My new young adult, well, it's not new, it's the second edition of a book called Talent. And I have a sequel to that I'm currently editing in my non-existent spare time. And I also run an e-zine called Writer Advice. And we do author interviews and we run contests and we give writing advice, obviously, and marketing advice and all of that. And if anybody wants to check it out, it's www.writeradvice, all one word, .com.
Yep, I have it right.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
There's no S. Every once in a while, somebody will hear an S that's not their writer's advice, and that's just not it. And then they write to tell me that there's something wrong with my website. And they're trying to help. I know that. And, I'm working on an interview right now. I'm reading books for the Sarton contest run through Story Circle Network. I skipped California Writers Club this morning so I could come and do this, but I might have skipped it anyway because I like to sleep in.
Your secret's safe with me.
Thank you. I do all kinds of writing. I journal frequently, and some of my new stuff comes from there, and some of it's just venting and depository and all of that. And I edit for people who are seeking an editor. And I'm pretty good at that. I get a lot of, people get more from my edits than they ever expected. So that's a good thing.
Well, that is very valuable to know. Do you edit in a particular genre that, because we want people to know what you do?
I will do any prose if it's an academic book on a subject I am not familiar with. I will tell the writer what my limitations are, because I cannot back check for sure.
Right.
But I rarely encounter that. I'm working with someone who's doing a memoir. I'm working with someone who's doing 12 steps for adults recovering from abusive childhoods. I'm doing, well, I haven't been working with him for a while, but I think we'll get back together. It's fiction for a man who wanted to get his book ready for a contest that would get him into a workshop or retreat. I'm not sure which, but it sounded prestigious. So all over the place, basically. And I always do a 500-word sample free so people can see what I do.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. Now, what is next on your docket? I know what Sylvie's going to be writing next. How about you? What are you going to be writing next?
Well, I'm finishing up Ground Rules, which is the sequel to Talent. And I am just barely starting a novella in Flash. And right now, it seems to be about my emotional journey at this point in time. It may turn into something about the pandemic. I don't know yet. It's really early in the process.
Okay.
And I keep reading books for review, and I'm reviewing more and more of them all the time. I might even put out a book about writing that lingers in the back of my head, and about my unique writing journey, and fill it with writing exercises that I know work. I know there are a lot of them out there, but there are a lot of writers out there too.
There are a lot of writers out there. And what I always say to people whenever someone mentions, oh, there's already a book about that, is that, well, that's the good news. If there's a book about it, that means there's an audience for it as well. And it's never been done in your unique voice before. So please.
Exactly. And I have some takes on things that other people, as far as I know, don't have. And then there's the rest of my life, which takes up time too.
Life does have a tendency to take up some time.
Yeah, I like being married very, very much, but I'd like to give some time to my husband. And then the dog, Eddie McPuppers, who was barking earlier. I hope you couldn't hear him.
I never mind a dog on the set, believe me.
Yeah, he said, I want to be interviewed too, Mommy.
Oh, isn't that sweet? So since we have writing experts here, because, you know, they say 90% of the country wants to write a book, and you did. You're like on the top of Mount Everest as far as people are concerned. How about some tips for future writers out there? I don't go a day that I don't meet people that say, oh, I always wish I wanted to write a book. And Sylvie, I'm so glad you're here, because so many of them are children's books that people want to write, and they don't even know where to begin. What would you say to a person like that?
I'm not really an established author, and this is my first published book, so I don't have a lot of advice that I can give. The only thing I can think of is, if you have an idea, write it down. Don't let it fly away. And then later on, if you come back and look at your idea or several ideas that you've written down, something may come to you. But I know that sometimes I think of something and I'm in the middle of something else, and I don't write it down, and then an hour later or 2 hours later, I have no idea what it was that I thought of.
Nope, you're absolutely right. And if you manage a whole hour before you forget it, you're better than me. I wouldn't even go 5 minutes. So.
I lose a lot of ideas too. I try to journal regularly. That's easier to say than every day. And sometimes my journal consists of lists, but the lists lead into other things. And then if I'm really being conscientious, I will go back and underline what has energy for me, whatever that means. And those are places I can dig in deeper. And a lot of things have evolved from that. Occasionally, I would write a scene for the one I'm on now, Ground Rules, and in my journal and figure out what it was I wanted to say there. I seem to write more freely in my journal. If you don't know what to write, look for a sensory image, like the light coming in from the window and reflecting off of the china base on the lamp that was probably purchased by my grandfather in 1939 when my parents were furnishing their very first place in Martinez, California. And you see how I'm going on?
Oh my gosh, I am right there with you, just hearing you describe light hitting a lamp.
Yeah. And one thing will lead to another, and maybe you will decide it's garbage. The other thing that you can do, speaking of garbage, is you can vent and let all of your frustrations out. And then you can go back, underline what you want, and you can use my absolutely favorite key, the delete key, to check out what you don't want recorded for the world. If you're afraid somebody will see it, then label your journal Insurance Records 2018, and don't worry about it. Nobody's ever going to look at it. All kinds of tricks and secrets.
Oh, so now we know that your husband's not looking at insurance records from 2018.
Well, he's not looking on my computer. He has a PC and I have a Mac.
Oh, okay. Well, then he doesn't even know how to open your computer.
We use our computers for very different things. He's an electrical contractor, and sometimes I can help him solve problems, and sometimes I say it's your system. I don't know it. And we only use mine for Zoom meetings that we're both attending, because I have the thing to go in. Right. So no, and besides which, he respects my journal. I've told him that's private and he must never go into it. And, you know, if he were 10 years old, which he is on some days, he'd go in, but he's not. He's a mature individual who respects that. Oh, don't tell anybody I called him mature.
Well, then we won't send a link so he can't watch this show. But you did publish a book all about your love story. Did he read it?
Oh, he read it twice, and he reads books on tape mostly, but he read the print version twice. He reads every letter of every word, and he had some questions about spelling, and I told him why I was right. I'm his spelling service. Whenever he needs a Goodwin Brown spelling service, how may I help you? And frequently is a spelling question, but he read it, he liked it, he noticed the differences in the later version. I've sent him Ground Rules a couple of times. He never receives it, which is weird, but so is email sometimes. So he has not read that one, but yes, absolutely. I would not have put it out in the world without his approval. If there was anything on it out, I took it out, and he said, no, this is the truth. This is what happened. He very much believes in telling the truth, and that's very refreshing.
Okay, so there were no surprises in there. He didn't say, that's not quite the way it went out.
No, he did offer at one time I could write my book, and then after each chapter, he would tell what really happened. But I passed on that option.
kind of a he said, she said kind of a book he had in mind, huh?
Well, he had in mind, yes, we'll leave it at that. She said and I said was more he had in mind, but that's okay. He's and he's learned a lot about literature and writers.
Oh.
And I've learned a few things about amps and ohms and electrical situations.
Well, isn't that what marriage is all about? We all learn a little bit from each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we are in a great shopping season right now.
Absolutely.
Which is why I said the internet is just incredibly shaky because everybody is online shopping. So my question for both of you is, what if I'm looking down my list and I have all sorts of people, what type of person should I be buying a book? And what should I put in the gift basket with your book? So Sylvie, if I was looking at your book, who should I buy it for? And what else should I include in the gift basket? Any thoughts?
Oh, well, I view my book as being perfect for ages about 3 to 7 or 8. The younger kids can have it read to them by their parents or another adult or even an older brother or sister. And what else might go in? Perhaps a small stuffed animal, like the kind that would be on the ark. A little giraffe or a little lion or something like that. Or maybe a few.
Well, I'm glad I got it right because I told you that I bought a copy of your book to give to my goddaughter, who is right there on the edge. She's 7 years old. And I was thinking just like you with a stuffed animal, but I was thinking maybe I'd give her 2 because it was Noah's Ark. So they would be 2
Right.
books too.
Right.
But it's not always easy to get, I'll say, a boy animal and a girl animal. And this is something that I learned so much about boy and girl animals from Sylvie, because we would look at pictures and she'd say, oh, that elephant looks more like a male than a female. And I'd say, I never actually thought about the difference, or quails or meerkats or anything else. So I don't know if they make them in stuffed animals.
I don't think you can tell the difference with every animal, but the 2 that actually really struck me were the lion, because
Lions, you could tell.
the male has a mane and the female doesn't.
Right. Nope. That's very true.
And the kangaroo, because the female has a pouch and the male doesn't. So I think for a lot of the animals, Stephanie, you could get away with buying 2 the same.
Okay, well, that's good.
I
I think I'm going to take the easy way out, and I'm going to give my little goddaughter a copy of the book and 2 identical animals, and I'll just tell her that they were a little married couple getting on the ark. How's that? And Lynn, who should I be buying your book for? If I'm looking down my list, and I'm never an on-time person, so I'm not ready yet. So who on my list should be getting your book, and what should I put in with the gift basket?
That is a very good question. For Never Too Late, really you can send it to anybody over the age of 35 to 40 who thinks it's too late, because evidently it's not. Anybody who is concerned that they'll never get married because they have a weight issue, anybody who is concerned that they'll never get married because they don't trust people, anybody who's lonely and needs a good story. That apparently this goes up and down a lot. And I shouldn't say apparently, but other people see it more than I do. I'm just telling my story. What should you put with it? Well, coffee, Starbucks, no, not in this day and age. Pre-packaged, tightly sealed coffee, and or chocolate, and or a pen, and a notebook so you can write your own story.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. Maybe like a pretty journal or something.
A pretty journal, yeah. Now for teenagers, probably not too many teenagers will admit this, except in books, but 99% of them are wannabes. And the other 1% are what's wrong with yous. And we have both of them in talent. It's the heroine is a girl. I have great nephews and a great niece, and I don't know them well at all. But I sent a copy of the book to the great niece, who I believe is 12, maybe 13. She started 7th grade this fall. She and her mom are going to read it together over Christmas break, her mom told me. And I am thinking about, I have offered the boys a copy of the book in case they'd like that from their great aunt. And if they don't like the book, they could give it to their English teacher or the school library. They live in Montana, and the schools are open up there. And for that matter, if you happen to know a librarian, or you know a parent of a teenager, or you know somebody in the military who is dealing with the loss and the loneliness that comes to military families, it's very good for those people. I had a number of people who were adults who read the book and assured me it was not just YA.
Okay.
And these are reader types. And I have one person who is absolutely not a reader, who sat there for 3 days and she was reading the book. And her daughter was visiting, came into the room and said, "Mom, why aren't you watching TV?" And the woman, Linda, said, "I'm reading this book." And she said, "Mom, I don't even know you anymore." She loved that book. Best book she ever read, maybe the only book she ever read.
Don't you love it when someone who is not a reader reads your book?
Absolutely. And I do have people like that in my life. And many of them have read the book and stuck with it. Another one said, "I'm really not a reader, but I'm reading this a bit at a time. I just love this book, but I can't read very much at a time." And I would like it to be in adult literacy programs, but we need an audio tape to go with it for that. And I don't have that yet.
All right. Something for the new year.
Yes, and what could go with talent? Definitely a journal with talent. And something having to do with finding your talent, or I don't know, I've never been asked this question before. I don't know, a YouTube subscription. So you could try out your talent. I don't know.
Try out your talent. I like that. Trying out your talent. Well, we are at the end of what, for most of us who are alive, has been probably one of the most difficult years, not just on a personal level, but on a global level. Aside from, I'm assuming we're all wishing for good health and more prosperity for all in the new year. On a literary level, do you have a wish either for yourself in your writing or for other people maybe in their own writing or reading? Is there something that you would like better in the new year? I know mine is that shipments come quicker. Oh goodness, shipping has been such a difficult thing, and as a publisher, this has been the bane of my existence, that I want books to go out faster, and because of so much being shipped right now, they are slower and slower and slower. So I know it, considering we're in the middle of a pandemic, that may be a rather vapid wish, but that's my literary wish, is faster shipments of books in the new year. Anything that you're thinking that we might need?
Well, I'm looking forward to the end of this, when we can go back to what will be a new normal, but something that I have missed dearly throughout this year is the ability to go into bookstores and libraries. Those are my favorite places in the whole world.
Yeah.
And fortunately, my husband does work at the local library. So I order things and he brings them home for me. But just to go in and browse, just to go into a Barnes and Noble and
Oh,
lost
so
in
yum.
there.
I'm
because-
with you. I could spend hours. That was date night for me and my husband when we were dating. It was just we would go and split up and then come back together just to share books. But I'm with you. Great wish.
That's my wish. Libraries and bookstores to reopen, full tilt.
I agree. Thank you. Lynn, any thoughts about the new year?
Absolutely. Sylvia, I agree with you completely, and more Zoom accounts for more libraries so that we can do author interviews and chats and all kinds of things. In addition, there are an awful lot of people who want to tell their story, and I wish they would get themselves a notebook, or if you're arthritic, just start on your computer, tell your story. I can help with that if you want, but first get your story out on the page. Nobody has your story. This is a quote. This is an approximate quote from Pat Schneider, who was a wonderful writer who also taught writing and died not too long ago, not from COVID. And she said, Emily Dickinson told hers, Shakespeare told hers. Who will tell yours if you do not?
Right.
And I want those stories, especially women's stories, but all stories, to be out there. I learned from your memoir. I learned from working with writers. So my literary wish would be that you binge watch TV a little less and write a little more.
I think that's a terrific wish for the new year.
Thank you.
And I am so thrilled that you both have projects and things moving on for the new year. So you have to promise me that when those projects get released, that you come back and join me. And so we can celebrate together, and even more so that you can inspire our viewers who are both readers and aspiring writers.
Absolutely. I would love to.
We're delighted. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And thank you for joining me. And for all of our viewers out there, happy writing. I am beyond excited today to be joined by author Beth Roose. Beth has written, oh God, I can't even count how many books Beth has written, but recently I've had the pleasure of publishing the last 2 of them. And there'll be many, many more to come, which I am so thrilled by. This is from the Forest Guardians Chronicles, book 1, A Matter of Humanity, and the next, Christmas in Cuyahoga Valley. And I believe that is a picture of Cuyahoga Valley right there in the background. And as soon as we are allowed to travel, I know one of my very, very first things is to get in the car and drive over and see Beth and Cuyahoga Valley in person. So Beth, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. And you will love the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. There's so much to see, so many waterfalls. If you're into waterfalls, which I am, and the lush foliage, in the spring. So, and it's got a covered bridge, which you did show.
Yes, I
as the
got
background. It's beautiful. And then, there's just so much to see and do in the valley, including its own scenic railroad.
Oh my gosh. Now,
So
I am a national park junkie, and I must admit I have never been to the Cuyahoga National Park, which
it is it's the 5th most visited national park in the country.
How did I miss this?
I don't know. A lot of people do. It's a hidden gem, that's for sure.
Now, how did you get involved so much with the park that you're now writing books that take place in the park?
I know it is strange, but my family owned property and helped form the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. It was first formed as the Cuyahoga Valley national recreation area. And then President Clinton made it a national park. And so the story began. Of course, I have a love because, the ledges and around Virginia Kendall Lake is all part of my ancestors' properties. Virginia Kendall Lake was named after Emma Geppert. Her dad was a big doctor there, and so that was named after her, and is part of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. When I really became involved with the park, it was because I love Christmas, and the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad had a Polar Express program from Chris von Allsburg's book, The Polar Express. And so they were just starting it and really were floundering. They had no idea really how to train elves. And so I was recruited for that job. And I'm lovingly called Elf Sparkle because everything has to sparkle and glitter for Christmas. And so that's how I segued into volunteering at the park. And, I just love the beauty of the park. Well, then I moved away, had a job out of the state for, nearly 30 years. So I moved back recently to help my dad, who's 87. And he's been a treasure trove of information about the park and sharing his experiences. And one of the experiences he shares that I share with everybody is I went on a tour with one of the rangers. There was a group of us, and it was right after my Elf Sparkle Meets Christmas the Horse film came out. And so we brought the cast there, and so we rode the train, and then we hiked the ledges. And so we get to one part of the ledges where Icebox Cave is, and I talk about that in most of my films and books. And so you walk around the back of those ledges and cave, and there's carvings. So here's the park ranger telling of how the Indians carved these. And my dad was with me then, and he started laughing, and he goes, "I'll have you to know my brother and I carved those." In front of this whole group of people. I thought that poor park ranger was going to melt into the ledges. She was so embarrassed. So after the tour, she asked to speak with my dad and she said, "This is important information. Thank you. And but please don't ever say that because it sells more tours saying the Indians did it." I was like, wait a minute, this is the national park. Don't we tell the truth? Apparently not. So, just little things like that. So, because of my love for the park, all my films and almost all of my books are centered in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. So, I just extended that love into books. Now, another love of mine, of course, is Sasquatch, the Ohio Grassman. And there is many, many legends of Sasquatch living within the park boundaries, along with the Pukwudgie and what people know as the Peninsula Python, which, it snows here. I'm not quite sure how a python lives here, but apparently it does. So that is in a future book for the spring. But at any rate, that's, how I segued in. I just have a passion and love for the park. And I love writing about the park. I love interjecting different areas of the park. In my books, we've put a map in there that's kind of true, but we took a little liberty. So I do love that, and here we are.
I love that. It's kind of true.
Kind of true. Well, since we did that map, the ski run was sold. And so they want to put high-end housing in there. I nearly cried when I heard that. I was like,
Oh,
please don't. And so there was a huge protest with a bunch of maskless people down in the valley protesting at the headquarters saying, no, we will not allow that. And so it's on hold. So I'm not sure what they're going to do with it.
oh my gosh. Just so our audience knows where the ski run is, that is now going to be high-end housing.
Yes. I hope not. The poor Bigfoot will never be able to leave their containment area. And I see in this map you have Bridal Falls. And the real name for Bridal Falls is Brandywine Falls.
Oh.
And that was the home of the Jate paper mill, which, they used, of course, a water mill to help, with the equipment way back in the day. And so, but behind that is, which you cannot see, is a cave. And in that cave, it's, all sorts of things happen in my book to come out. The Blues War behind it. Over half the book is about that cave and
wow.
people hiding in that cave. So this map really does it. It does nothing for it. It is spectacular, especially right now. And then once we get that 12 foot of snow here on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and it begins to melt, the Cuyahoga River will be overflowing, and so will those falls. It will be like Niagara Falls. I cannot wait to go take pictures that day.
All right, and the next book and the next map will have to get that cave in on the picture.
Yeah, we will make we'll need to add a few things like the Grether Farm, which will be sort of close to the Pukwonji camp and the Blue Heron Rookery.
Okay.
So because Morgan and his wife, Bev Grissom from the Marcia, have children. And so they need an expanded, from a 3-bedroom to a 5 to 7 bedroom house. So they're going to move to the old Grether Farm.
Okay.
And so that'll be on the new map.
Okay. It sounds to me like the new map is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, we'll have to make it 2 pages.
Exactly. Then we'll have fold outs in a spread.
Yeah, there we go. I like that idea of a fold out. 3D.
Spread. So tell us a little bit about these 2 books. It is prime shopping season, and yes, it's not too late to order a Kindle.
Correct.
Of Humanity, that stunning cover, and Christmas in Cuyahoga Valley. So give us a little.
Well, the Matter of Humanity, it chronicles the Sasquatch and Pukwonji tribes within the Cuyahoga Valley, and like I said, there are 4 stories within that book, and it is a fast-paced, fun adventure. It's targeted for teens and tweens, and one is Rider of the Light, the Hornet Queen, the Fire Maiden, or Queen, I forget what we call it, and then A Matter of Humanity. So each book is totally different from the other book, and it's, like I said, very fast paced, and they're pretty much contained to that map area. So they do not stray from that map area that we have in the books.
Not yet, they don't.
I guess my favorite in that book would be the Fire Maiden, and I say that because it is just so much all at once of bad things happening and people being deceitful, and poor Bev at the Grissom farm falls in love with this guy who turns out to be an alien and was out for all of the minerals and the mineral rights within the Cuyahoga Valley. And so, they uncovered that, and it just was, there's a lot of suspense and things that happen, serious things that happen within that book, within that story. So, and of course, the Hornet Queen is right behind it. And I'm sure you all are aware of, the deadly hornets that have arrived in the United States. So this is kind of a spin of that, only it's a hybrid mix of a human and one of the hornet, the deadly hornets. So it's an interesting story if you like stories, and which I do. And so that one, a lot of serious things happen in that book too, but it all turns out for the good. This is a teen book. So I love that book. I love all 4 short stories under one cover. It keeps you interested because you can't wait to get to the next story. So I really like that. The Christmas in the Cuyahoga Valley is 2 stories under one cover, and the lost child really pulls at your heartstrings, that one. And they encounter, of course, the Sasquatch are helping, and at the Grissom farm they find this little boy, one of the Sasquatch, and bring it, but it's a huge snowstorm and no one could get to them. So here's Bev and other friends helping with this little boy. So that's a heartstring pull, that story. And then the other one is the Christmas Gift, and that again pulls a little bit at the heartstrings, and but it's more kind of upbeat with that one. So I don't know, they're both all of the stories are Sasquatch oriented and all in the park, and they're all completely different with different themes, as you can tell, but I actually loved writing every story. And I know you're going to ask me where I get my inspiration from, and I'm going to give a plug. I never know what's going to inspire me. It's something I see, and it's usually, my sister's a couture designer, and she is always sending me pictures, beautiful pictures of these gowns she does that are breathtaking, and the makeup she does is, it's just like, wow. So it's usually one of those things that goes, oh, I need to write a book about that. So and one I have next to write is the Olympian, and you know which picture I'm talking about, the Olympian women. And she has all these beautiful women with beautiful gowns looking like they're on Mount Olympus, standing, in different positions on these steps that look like Mount Olympus. So I couldn't help myself. So I never know what's going to inspire me. The Hornet Queen was something I saw on a steampunk site. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm confessing. I'm coming out of the closet. I love steampunk. Now, I saw a brooch that had this hybrid on it, and I went, oh, I am so making a story out of that. So, it's little things like that. You have to, as a writer, you can't sit there and go, oh my God, I have writer's block. Oh, this is terrible. No, I look for things to inspire me. And, like I said, I never know what it's going to be. I will tell you, I draw most of my inspiration from when I'm sitting, because I take a lawn chair and sit down at Bridal Falls or Buttermilk Falls. And, it just helps me clear my head and think. And I draw inspiration from that as well.
Wow.
And then, of course, my dad's funny stories about the park. So that helps.
Well, you are super inspiring, because you're right. There are so many people who say, I don't know what to write. I have writer's block. I don't know what to do. And you just rattled off, like, did you write those down before we interviewed?
Well, I have to tell you, prior to writing, I did write, but technical computer manuals is what I wrote. So I treat this, I work for Fruit of the Loom, and I don't know if I can say that, but I worked for Fruit of the Loom. I was there in charge of their computers, and so I did a little bit of everything. But I would work anywhere from 10 to 14 hours, 6 days a week with Sunday off. That was it. And I did that for years. And I take that same structure, that same schedule, and the seriousness of the job, I bring it into writing. This is a job. And yes, it's a creative, fun job, but you still need structure. You still need a schedule, and it helps you know where you're at in the process. And it helps you divide up your day, because I can't sit in front of a computer, or I would be blind by the end of the day.
Right.
I need to break up my day. So I start at 5:30 in the morning. I'm a morning person. So I have my cup of coffee and my grapefruit, and I am cruising the internet while I'm doing that. And so that's my fun time till 6:30, of which I go get dressed. And then I come back, sit down, and read emails. And so this is all delineated out on my schedule. I read emails till probably 7:30. And then at 7:30, I actually sit and write for 3 hours. So by that time it's lunch. And so I have an early lunch. Then I spend from 1 to 2 going, how can I market my book myself? I'm not depending all on Red Penguin. You have to take ownership of your book. It is your book. And so no one's going to have the passion that you have. And so it's taking that passion and channeling it into, who can I contact today? And if it's just one person, at least you're attempting to market your book. And so now, if you're like me, I have children's books, so it's a little difficult right now because libraries aren't open and schools are not open. Daycares are, but they won't let strangers in, even if you ask. So it makes it hard, but you have to be creative. I contacted Grapevine Library, and I sent that to Stephanie, the link where they actually read it on their Zoom call. They read Elf Sparkle Meets Christmas the Horse, which was fabulous. That's one thing you can do. And the other thing was, most of the local news channels are reading during the day to their little preschoolers. So one of the Channel 19 here in the Akron, Ohio area, in Cleveland area, her name was Stephanie also, she read my Jimmy Paul the Pug Tooth Fairy book. And I kept looking. I had to go get the book because I go, is that in my book? It sounded so good. But they're on-air personalities, so they're used to making things sound good. And so, I mean, there are so many avenues that you can try. You can't be afraid of rejection. You can't be afraid of the word no. It is just a word, no. That didn't hurt. It's just a word, no. And you move on. You go, oops, scratch that one off. I'll come back to that one, in a couple months. So, so I spend about an hour a day, trying to reach out and find someone to talk to. And so, you just you can't let fear rule your life in many ways. So, that's how I work. And, then I go back to sitting down and writing, and then I walk away, and then I'm doing fun things with one of my sisters, or I'm over helping my dad. And then when I sit down about 9 o'clock at night, I have the TV on, and I'm usually watching Star Trek, I admit, or one of those, fun shows, and or King of Queens. That's another favorite of mine. And then I write while I'm watching that, because something they say may spur you to go, oh my God, that's such a great idea. Oh, I'm going to take that and run with it and expand on that. So, I sit till probably, I want to say 11:30. I don't stay up to 1 o'clock, hint, hint. And I do draw the line about no later than midnight. That's it for me because I get up at 5:30. So
5:30, yeah.
and that's my day. I do that Monday through Friday. You just have to be scheduled about it. You can't be, if you went into a job, you would have set things to do. And so you have to give yourself set things to do.
You are so right. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining me. Well, partly because people really need to read these books. This is fun stuff. And whether you love Bigfoot fantasy series, books that take you every place from having, Sasquatch and aliens and everything in between, you want to read these books. And if you are a national park junkie like me, you definitely want to read these books. But besides that, Beth, I am so excited that you joined us today to talk about your writing process, your marketing process, and the way you are approaching this whole thing like a business. This is something that I say so often to authors, both about the writing and the marketing. And, I think people don't listen to me anymore, but boy, when an author says it, thank you. So,
you're welcome.
thank you for joining me. And I hope that our viewers out there head on over to the bookstore of your choice, or better yet, the Cuyahoga National Park is going to have them in their gift shop. So maybe when the snow melts, we can all meet up there and do a big book signing.
That would be amazing.
That's what I want more than anything. So thank you so much for joining
Well,
me.
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And have a Merry Christmas. Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed